how and why do you think that you ended up evolving from the Magic Girl era till now?
I just didn't want to do Talkbox anymore. Everybody knew me as the Talkbox girl, oh, the girl that does Talkbox, and I was getting recognized by some big names in the industry. Like I would walk in, for example, I had a tradie from the East Siders reach out to me and he invited me to be his guest of honor at one of the shows that he was doing to come meet him and his team, his wife, and all of that. And I remember walking in and I had like four or five other artists that were like, "Hey, you're the talk box girl." And I turned around and I was like, "You talking to me?" And they're like, "Yeah." They're like, "You're magic girl, right?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I'm thinking in my mind, like, how in the hell do you know who I am? Like, that's so weird. So I was getting like a lot of attention for it, which I'm grateful for because it did open a lot of doors for me. Um, but I just got tired of being known as the talkbox girl because I'm like, I don't just do talkbox. Like I produce, I write, and I'm not the greatest singer, but I do sing. At one point I was rapping, even though I'm not a rapper, I'm a writer. I always tell everybody that. I do have other stuff other than talkbox. So everybody thought that I was just like this talkbox gimmick girl that just did covers and old school covers, and that's all I was really getting known for. And I was like, but that's not all I do. So that's kind of where I was just like, it's time to kind of just put the hanger up with that one.
Hmm. Well, it's always interesting because when people are known for doing something that they're not really happy to be known for doing it, it's always kind of curious to me. But with that said, it seems like throughout your career, you've also been very hands-on. Like you said, you write and produce, and throughout Forever Genesis, you also do that. So, how and why did you decide you wanted to be so hands-on as your career has evolved?
I decided that I think it was just my desire of wanting to get things done. And then when I first started in the music, I was in a point of my life where I wasn't going on the right track. I was around the wrong people. I wasn't doing what was required of me as a person at that age. And I was just getting into a lot of trouble. So financially, I wasn't able to like go give somebody money to produce a beat or to go give somebody money to record myself. And then every time something like that would happen, I would hear that certain person have either like have the same hook or steal my lyrics or do something that they would just like copy my style. So I kind of put myself in a cocoon and I was like, I don't want to talk to nobody because that was my first impression of what the industry was, and I was totally wrong about that because again, I was with the wrong people. And that's when I decided I just started to learn everything myself. I taught myself how to do production, even though I come from a family of musicians and my dad had a studio all his life. So I kind of um, implemented those things that I saw from him and learned from him into what I was doing. I started to be like really hands-on with hardware. I started off, my first drum machine was the MK2 by Native Instruments when they first dropped their machine product line. I had the first one. I remember I pre-ordered it. It was like $1,300 when it was up for pre-order. I remember I was like, I have to get this. And I got that. And that was like what started everything after that. Like just my desire to not want to rely on anybody was what drove me to want to learn how to do a little bit of everything. And not only that, but I think it was just like I think it was a desire that was always in me. I just didn't know, that I'd had a passion to do it.
Okay. Well, it's interesting then you say that because on Genesis, Still Loving You is the first song, and that's the one song you didn't produce or have a hand in producing. So why did you put
Hmm.
that one, why'd you decide to put that one first?
I decided to put that one first for um, the reason that I believe that the just the feel of it and the story behind that. And the story behind that is the fact that it was sitting in Tony A's 8 DAT for about 30 years. And he finally was like, I have some instrumentals on these 8 DATs and I'm gonna take him down to my boy's house to get him out. He's like, I think I want to sell him. And I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. It was just a conversation with no intention of being on the EP at all.
Hmm.
And then he's like, oh, I'm gonna email these over to you. He's like, tell me what you think. Like, I haven't heard them in, X amount of years. And I was like, okay. So he sends me the email, and there was two other ones that I listened to that I was like, oh, okay, this is cool, but they were more structured. I thought they were just like structured for rappers. Like, you couldn't really do anything vocally over them. And then I listened to Loving You, and keep in mind he was on the phone because I had my Bluetooth so we could be on the phone at the same time. And I was listening to Loving You. About 10 seconds into it, I said, Tony, I'm gonna call you back. He's like, why? I said, I'll call you back. Give me like 20 minutes, I'll call you back. So I turned around, I turned my desk on, and I immediately just started writing. I turned my mic on, and I dropped the which I call as the vocal dummy, so I don't forget my lyrics and my melodies. So I recorded that, exported it, and I emailed it back to him. I said, check your email. And he's like, okay. And he listened to it. He called me back immediately. He said, that's it. We have to put that on the EP. I said, that one's it. That's it. So I literally, in a span of like 20 minutes from me hearing it immediately, I sat there, wrote the record, sent it back. And as soon as I got the approval, I was like, okay, I'm going to learn this. I'm not changing nothing. I got to learn this melody. I got to learn what I said and then go record it. So that's how that ended up on the EP. And for me, it was very important to highlight that because I believe that music is timeless. And when artists make music, it shouldn't be like the weekly trend or, the what do they call it? The buzz of the month or whatever. I don't believe that music should be that. And if music is good music, it should be timeless. So me wanting, of course, people wouldn't know that listening to it, but I think that song sounds so fresh to everybody. They think that we sat there in the studio and produced it together, which was entirely not true. He did this like 30 years, probably like 5 years before I was born, you know? And so he did this so long ago, and the way the chemistry was just there, I felt it was important to highlight that record and put it first. And also because it was so different than when everybody was expecting. Everybody was expecting like Talkbox and old school and just the certain type of West Coast G funk. And I tell people there's West Coast G funk, and then there's my kind of funk, which is like Violator funk. What I call it's a mixture of 805 of 805 funk. It's a different type of style, and I can't say it's even a style because it's just different types of sounds and ears that me and my friend Dominator use. So it was just totally different than everybody was expecting. So I felt that it was very important to highlight that song, and I wanted that song to be the first one that everybody heard because I knew if it wasn't that song, then it wasn't gonna set the difference. It wasn't gonna make a difference when people heard it.
Okay. And then with your on a personal side of things, what did you learn about yourself letting some of the power and the control go to let someone else produce, to have Crystal Glove Taylor mix and master instead of you doing everything yourself?
Um, I had to kind of just tell myself that you can't do everything, you know? So, I think that's very important that we have to self-analyze and realize that we can't do everything. There's some things that people are really good at that you're not good at, and it's important to allow other people to come and water your garden so that way your garden can flourish, And I felt that that was very important. And for me, this being my debut project, even though I've been doing music for a long time, for me, I feel like this is my debut project. And it was very important for me to set a standard and make a difference. It's not only in writing and production, making it sound different, but also in the quality of the music, because that's something that I feel a lot of independent artists don't pay too much attention to. Like, oh, I have this really dope record. Like, your record could be dope, but if it sounds like shit, the record is shit. You want it to grab the ear. You want it like the first 10 seconds, like if someone's not vibing to your song and the mix is sloppy, like you just wasted your whole time, you wasted your money. It's, you just wasted time. So I felt that it was important to get people who took pride in their craft. And after I had kind of explained that to Tony, that's when he introduced me to Chris the Glove and Tony G. And he said, "Hey, let's take the project over to them, but what's your budget? It's going to cost you money." And I said, "I don't. The money doesn't matter." I said, "I'll pay whatever. It doesn't matter. I just need to get this done. Like this needs to be with them, you know." I said, "But let's take them the project and let them listen to it. And if they like it, then cool, And if they don't, then it's not supposed to be with them." And it kind of just everything just worked together so well. We took the project over to Chris, and it's funny because again, I go back to people who know what they're doing and take pride in their craft. Chris is a legend in the game, and he's worked on so many legendary records that it didn't matter how much he had to work with. And I'll explain that the Loving You record was so old, right? We couldn't find the stems and the dats. So all we had was the instrumental together already. So I was telling Tony, I was like, I don't know if that's enough for Chris to work with. And he's like, well, let's take it to him and see what he tells us. So what we did is we took the instrumental off the DAT. We exported it onto an MP3 file, obviously. Then I went and dropped my vocals at my friend Dominator's house. We mixed and mastered the vocals at Dominator's house. Then we exported those and took them to Chris. So all Chris had to work with was the MP3 and my mix and mastered my vocals and obviously my harmonies and my choruses and things like that. That's all he had to work with.
So what was
And
that, like
so when
a 3 or 4 track?
Yeah, like a 3 or 4 track. That's all he had to work with. So when I got the first draft back, and I remember because me and Tony were, I can't remember where exactly we were, but I think we were at a studio session and we were having lunch. And he's like, "Yo, I got the demo back. You want to listen to it?" He's like, "Let's listen to it at the same time." And I was like, "Okay, cool." So we listened to it at the same time, and I started crying. And he's like, "Why are you crying?" I said, "I'm not sad." I said, "This I didn't think it was gonna come turn out to be this good. Like this is where it needs to be." And then Chris added some things that people you would not believe Chris added that we noticed because obviously Tony produced a track and I heard it raw for how it was. Chris added some things and I was just like, this is it. Like it's done. And I knew to leave it alone. And I was like, and Tony asked me, he's like, "Do you like it?" I said, "I love it." I said, "I love the record. I love how it came out." I said, "But don't ask me any more questions because and then I'm gonna want to change things. So let's just put this one away and keep going. And so we left that one as and then yeah, so that I think at that moment is when I finally opened up into trusting other people to do what needed to be done. Because I had a lot of trust issues in the sense where I was giving my projects to people who didn't care or maybe just needed to make some quick money or they just they weren't taking pride in what they were doing. So I had a lot of that in my mind. So after giving the first record to Chris, it was really like a sigh of relief for me, and it opened up a lot of self-confidence to want to just continue going. And then after that, we Tony introduced me to KDMX Master Tony G, and that's a whole nother story that's like crazy. And I just feel like this project was in the hands of people it needed to be in.